Matt asked me to come up here and speak to you with all kinds of conditions. I couldn't overindulge. There were other conditions. Casey set a 5-minute limit on the speech. So I had to get creative, so my speech has a preamble, which is not part of the 5-minute limit. And the reason it has to have a preamble is because Matt asked me personally to speak about Casey as well as himself, so I needed a little more time. I'm going to be very, very blunt in that the preamble is really all about Casey. And I have to say that I've spent a lot of time with Matt in a lot of private conversations, business, etc. I know him very well, and there's several, when you talk to somebody, you know him well, certain subconscious things pop up. And I'm going to talk about 3 specific things that Casey means to Matt that aren't as obvious, maybe even to him. And the first is, Casey has an extremely strong faith. And Matt, that's very important to him. It doesn't always shine through, but Matt's told me many stories about his own mother and how she brought him closer in his faith and his walk with God. And I think Casey is emblematic of that. And that's very important to him. And Casey, that's certainly something that I can assure you he holds very dear. Second of all, my second item has already been discussed at length. It's pretty tough coming up here after all those great speeches. I don't have a lot of material left. But Casey's so strong with her family. Family's so important. And she, Matt told me she would back her family, her close friends. Even if she knows they're wrong, she would defend them. And that's so important to Matt, because if you've ever heard Matt talk about his family when they're not around, you'd think his sister came here on a unicorn. And we should all just be thankful we're sharing air with his brothers. And I mean that. He talks about all of you like you guys are mythical creatures. So the Yaelings expect him to talk about you the same way. He already probably holds you in the same regard. But that strength in family is so important to him. And I know that means a lot, because Casey, today, we all got the privilege of seeing you not only become a bride, but we got to see you officially become a mother. And that's a very selfless thing to do. It's pretty remarkable. Now granted, Matt has 4 wonderful children, which have already been highlighted, which are fantastic people. But I know that they'll be fortunate that they have you in their lives, as Jack just pretty well intimated to all of us. So, with that being said, Casey, I do want to conclude the preamble. You are a shining beacon of hope to every single bald man that's here tonight. That concludes the preamble. I'll begin the speech. 5 minutes. We'll see how it goes, Casey. But this is really about Matt, and this is Matt's part. And Matt, I consider you to be my best friend. Before, I would call you my business partner, which is remarkable. 7 years ago, I didn't know Matt Algar. I didn't know who he was. I'm standing here talking at probably the 5th most important day of his life, the first 4 being his children and today. And I have to say, he's the most remarkable person. I've never met someone that I want to punch and hug at the same time. I've never met someone who I want to go drink a beer with, and then I'm like, no, I don't. I don't even want to know. I won't get to say a word. And I think there was some discussion about Father today at the ceremony. He apparently didn't get a word in either. So I know how you feel, Father. I deal with it every day. But I have to tell you, Matt, if I have one sister, I don't have any brothers, but if I had a brother, you'd be the first guy on the list. But what I'm about to say really has a lot to do with, I think, and I think Jack kind of explained this. When I first met Matt, he was kind of I don't know how to explain it other than he was kind of a ship out in the ocean adrift. And people that knew him he's got a mind that goes 1,000,000 miles an hour. He's high energy, all those things. But he was just never happy. He could never really find it. His children filled his heart, his family filled his heart, but there was just this empty space. And it dawned on me not long ago that Matt has an unbelievably creative mind, but his heart wasn't full. So his mind and his heart were out of balance. And that's why he just couldn't find his way in some places. And I met Casey and Matt the first time, and then the second time more privately, where I had a drink with Casey and I realized she couldn't drink much booze. But then again, I'm 6'5", and I don't know, she's like 5 feet, so that doesn't mean a whole lot. But I told Matt after that, he would remember this, I said, "You're gonna marry that woman." And the reason I said it is, Casey, to steal a line from Star Wars, the Force is strong with Matt, but you bring balance to the Force. And ultimately, as I kind of conclude my speech, I think the most important thing, Casey, is that you filled his heart, and now he's in balance. And he's a better man, he's a better dad, he's a better friend, he's a better brother, just a better guy, because you're in his life. But I will say this, there's a lot of fathers in this room, and I'm one of them, but there are none his better. He's got to be one of the best, and I think that says a lot about who he is, about his own father, his mother, and certainly all of his older brothers and the example they've shown. So I'm going to conclude with the two really quick anecdotes that are more light. Recently, Casey started working at Starbucks. And I realized right away with Matt, this had to have something to do with some kind of financial incentive. And I realized after he told me that she gets free Starbucks coffee. And he promised that we'd have it at the office, and that's been like a month ago, and I haven't seen any. So I suspect that he's been bootlegging it on Amazon and talking about 400% returns, which are not real. The other story I have to tell is Matt has more pairs of shoes than most of the women in this room. He could wear a different suit every day of the month. And he's been on this diet of insanity. When we started, he bought like a pallet of Diet Coke, and then 3 days later watched a YouTube video and said he'll never drink any more Diet Coke. So we got a ton of Diet Coke at the office. I can't drink it all. And what ended up happening is he started going on a diet where I haven't watched him eat a solid meal. And Brian is a person we work with, has a lot of lunches with us, in like 2 or 3 months. He ate soup every day. And I'm excited to say tonight I'm going to get to see him eat a meal that will produce a solid turd. Because Matt, if you know him, he has to announce all of his bowel movements. And everybody that works with us knows what I'm talking about. So, at this point, I'm going to raise a glass. A toast to Matt and Casey Allgaier. I haven't even finished. To Starbucks, to soup, to soulmates.